All right. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michaela Baruch, and I am the head of education here at Ozobot. Um, Prior to that role, I worked in public education for almost 16 years. I taught middle school literacy and ELD. I was a school administrator for many years, and my most recent role before I had this one was as the district head of teacher development. So, all of that said, I am very familiar with the energetic buzz that defines May in schools. So whether you are in the throes of that final days of school countdown with your own students or gearing up to host and facilitate summer camps of your own, I am so appreciative that you have taken the time away from that excitement to be here today. I'm interested to hear a little bit about each of you and your motivation for joining today's webinar. So I'm going to launch a quick poll for us so that you can share that context. So you should see some questions on your screen. Please take a few moments to fill those out. Great, thank you so much. We'll take another minute or so. Right. If you have not already, please go ahead and submit those poll responses. All right, I'm going to end this poll. And we'll take a look at the results. So it looks like we're a pretty even split in terms of folks' intention of using Ozobot this summer in a camp, a library, small group tutoring, or any other setting. And that's wonderful, regardless of how you answered this question. And then we also have an array of experiences and reasons for attending today. So a couple of you are STEM or STEAM coordinators or camp leaders. A couple of you have always had an interest in using Ozobot in the summer, and one of you has done so before. And then one person is here who's taking the summer off, which is so amazing and necessary. So congrats on that. And then it looks like we're all have 4 years of experience or less in using Ozobot. And so I do want to say that regardless of how you answered any of these questions, I really do believe that you will take something away from today's session. And so I'm really excited. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and review our agenda. All right, so here is a look at what we will be covering today. So I'm going to start by talking about how summer instruction just looks different from the regular school year. And why coding is powerful for learners of all ages. Then I will share some recommendations and considerations for how to structure summer learning. The second half of our webinar will focus on specific resources and products that we recommend and have created for summer instruction specifically. All of these are intended to use with Ozobot Evo, possibly a classroom kit, depending on the amount of students that you're planning on working with. And additionally, I will say upfront that there are costs associated with two of the products that we recommend for summer camps, though they are certainly not required for summer camps. That is the self-service PD and the magnet tiles. Ozobot's EDU team recommends them because we love them. And we believe deeply in the value they provide in leveraging your use of Ozobots. The rest of the resources that I will share today are free of charge for you. So that includes a summer camp guide, some pacing guides, and I'll be doing a deep dive into a few particularly strong lessons that we selected for today's webinar because we think that they will be put to great use this summer and also during the regular school year, quite frankly. Everything that I will be covering is tailored for an engaging and immersive experience for students. A few housekeeping items before we jump in. Please keep videos off, remain muted to minimize distractions. Please also be aware that I am flying solo in facilitating today's webinar, which means that I won't necessarily be able to respond to the chat as quickly as we have been in webinars past. And so know that I will take some time at the end for Q&A and otherwise just limit the use of the chat to responding to specific questions. Also, please know that I will be sending a follow-up email to all attendees of this webinar with links to every single resource that I cover. There will be a lot of them. And I am also recording today's session, and the recording of the session will be sent out to you as well. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about just how summer instruction is different than the regular school year. In my early years of teaching, I spent every summer teaching what our district referred to as fifth block, which was essentially summer school. It was 5 additional weeks of extended learning in literacy and math for students who were voluntold that they had to attend if they wanted to move on to the next grade. What that meant for me is I got to see small groups of my former 7th grade students for 2.5-hour chunks of reading and writing every day in June and for about half of July. Despite the fact that I taught my summer school class in my same classroom with many of my same students that I had all year long, with the same anchor charts hanging on the wall under the light of the same lamps that I had in my room that were later deemed illegal by the fire department, those 5 weeks of summer instruction felt fundamentally different. Particularly when it came to one thing, the level and quality of writing that many of them produced. Students who I had been hammering all year about sensory details and robust character development and incorporating dialogue suddenly started to use these tools in ways that I never saw prior to Memorial Day. And when I reflect on what I would attribute that shift to, I just credit that atmosphere of summer learning. It is totally different. And it's not like my direct instruction changed dramatically when my last day of school hit, or my anchor charts were suddenly noticed at a higher rate. The summer just felt more relaxed. We had more time, we had more space. We weren't interrupted by bell schedules or by attendance reminders or administrators coming in to observe. It was just me and my students in the flow, deeply approximating how to best communicate the brilliant ideas in their brains. I would argue that that is precisely the type of environment that all people of all ages require to think and create at the highest levels. And in this way, writing and coding are the exact same. They both tap into some of the highest levels of thinking within Bloom's. Imagine, construct, create, invent. They both also require immersion and imagination, risk-taking, and I would even say some playfulness. So why teach coding in the first place? As I mentioned, coding is fundamentally a medium of expression akin to writing or drawing. Studies by code.org have shown that students who engage in regular computer science instruction demonstrate higher transfer of skills such as spatial awareness, metacognition, and mathematical reasoning. They outperform their peers in reading, math, and science, with gains showing as early as third grade and continuing on through AP Calc and AP Stats. Students who study computer science regularly are 17% more likely to enroll in a four-year college and to arrive at that college with more credits to apply. They also outperform in problem solving and executive functioning skills, processes that are essential to learning and living as a human being on this earth. Breaking down complex problems, iterating over solutions, articulating thoughts in a structured and logical manner, and expressing ideas in an innovative way. I would say now, more than ever, our culture needs people and thinkers who don't crumble at the first sign of feedback or things not going exactly as planned. Coding requires someone to anticipate challenges and almost expect that things won't work the first time. At a very basic level, coding supports students in approaching mistakes with curiosity and eagerness to learn why and try something new, rather than experiencing total shame and surrender and defensiveness. So as I mentioned earlier, summer camp settings naturally foster the ideal environment for high engagement and high output that we just talked about. There's such value in doing with coding. First of all, students can focus on specialization in a summer camp setting. To put it differently, they're there because they want to be there. They want to get good at coding and robotics. And so chances are the engagement and the investment will also be there with them. The informal learning environment allows for more innovative teaching. And again, it allows for their brains to relax and create and to play. Hands-on activities and experiential learning, there's fewer time constraints. Students can just put the Ozobot in their hands and see what they can do, see what they can create. And as a result of all of this, the level of social emotional growth, collaboration, team building, exposure to different perspectives and approaches. So there are a lot of ways that one could approach the structure and planning of summer camps. And there would not be time to get into all of them, right? And each situation is somewhat unique. But regardless of your method, there are a few key best practices to keep in mind. First, you want to think about like progressive and flexible learning. What I mean by that is that you want to begin with the basics. So even if you have just one student who's never used Ozobot before, you want to be prepared to start that student at the very beginning, so that they're totally prepared and have a strong foundation beneath them. And that said, you should also be prepared for coders and for students who just move really, really quickly, because as I mentioned, they have a zest. They've chosen to be there using Ozobot and coding and robotics. You want to keep a balanced schedule in mind, minimizing the sit and get instruction and maximizing the exploratory learning where they have their robots in their hands. And if the setting is conducive, get outside for some really intentional screen-free coding. The lessons that we'll take a look at a little bit later in today's session will really get into some of the ways that you can couch coding and thinking skills within the context of everyday life. Try to keep things challenge-oriented. Part of thinking like a programmer, as we've discussed, is being able to iterate on solutions. So definitely always ask students if it can be done in a different way. Even if they say they've gotten to the end, even if they say that they've done the task in its entirety, there's always a different way and a different approach to try. And lastly, it's important to consider the training of your facilitators. So we've talked a lot about how, you want to foster an environment that really encourages risk-taking, that encourages playfulness and creativity. And obviously, that would necessitate a facilitator who's really strong at building relationships. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, they need to understand robotics and coding. They need to be qualified instructors. So that said, sorry. Thank you for your patience. One of the things that I want to share with you today is one of our newest products that we have recently released. And that is our self-service PD. So if you're overseeing the training of facilitators, or if you are interested in some training yourself, one way that you can do this is through self-service PD. And the best part about it is it can be done from your living room or your classroom or your lounge chair, wherever it is that you or your camp facilitators are. And so we just released 3 courses that cover Ozobot's color codes, Ozobot Blockly fundamentals, and advanced Ozobot Blockly programming. You can purchase these trainings a la carte or in a full bundle, and they're a great way to prepare the adults who are leading and facilitating coding instruction with Ozobots. If you are interested, there will be a link to learn more and to purchase these sessions in my follow-up email. So now that we've heard some best practices for summer camp, I want to turn the floor over to you because I know that we have a lot of seasoned educators in this space. So I would love for each of you to take some time to type into the chat one idea or suggestion that you have to boost student engagement, creativity, and learning in the summer months. Let's take some time to actually write those into the chat. All right, I'm seeing some great suggestions in the chat if you have not already. please do go ahead and share your answer to that question. I've also pasted it into the chat. Awesome. If you haven't already, please do take a moment to read through the suggestions in the chat because there are some great ones. And so now that we've heard some great ideas and best practices for summer camp, we're going to now dig into the tools that are available to you all to plan and implement some of these tactics effectively. So each of the resources that I'm about to share with you today, as I mentioned earlier, were created to maximize you and your students' experiences with Ozobot. So the EDU team and I, we talk a lot about how part of your purchase of a classroom kit or just of a single Evo is the free content that comes from our team. We have so many lessons available to you in our lesson library, but we also know that sometimes you aren't even really sure where to look or how to get what it is that you need. Sometimes you don't even know what it is that you need. So the bundles that I'm sharing have been curated specifically for pacing learning and instruction in different environments. In addition to reviewing the resources, I will also be stopping along the way to highlight some lessons that we have recently pulled from the Ozobot archives and polished up for your use. So let's get into the good stuff. Let's share my screen again. So one of the most important things for you to know today is that we've spent some time adding some updates to our website. And one of the first updates lives in the Beyond the Classroom section of our website. This is where you will find a lot of the resources that I'm mentioning that are for, as the title suggests, use beyond the classroom. So I'm going to show you where those live. I'm going to scroll down. And again, I will share this link in a follow-up email with you as well. And you'll see down here that we have summer resources right here. So we have the STEM Camp Guide, an after-school STEM program guide, screen-free coding. And then here, there's also a link to EDU support where you can schedule some time free of charge to just chat with a member of the EDU team. So if you don't see exactly what you're looking for, or you want something a little bit more curated, or you could hear some more, you could use some more suggestions, feel free to click get in touch there, and we can meet with you and talk about that. So I'm going to dig into these resources a little bit more. And the first resource that I want to talk to you about is the Ozobot STEM Camp Guide. So this guide is a bundle of our lesson materials curated for summer camp experiences. You will also find all the general resources and links to training you need to get started with the camp. This guide has direct links to lessons in our library, so you can just click and find the lessons that you want to use. So for this bundle, every lesson we selected is there for a reason. It is either a cornerstone intro to lesson for either color codes or Blockly, or some of our most beloved and saved content, or lessons that explore core content in each grade in a fun and engaging way. We have provided enough information about each lesson for you to browse and select topics that work for your purposes. Like we've been talking about, the number one rule with summer instruction is high engagement. So once you've completed the intro lessons for a specific coding type, either color code or Blockly, we really encourage you to use this to peruse like a menu and select topics or lesson content that best suit the students who you will have in front of you. So one of my absolute favorite lessons that is featured in this camp guide is Stargazing with Ozobot. The color code, this is a color code lesson, and it first asks students to recreate a sketch of a constellation of their choosing. That's an activity that I think in and of itself is fun and truly limitless. Students can create a color code path for their Ozobot to navigate through their constellation creation. What I like about this lesson is the flexibility that it offers. It can be accessible for so many different age groups, possibly all at once. You could parlay a study of Greek mythology, or one of my favorite topics, astrology, for older students, or you could simply provide a group of pre-K students with 4 constellations to choose from and to trace. Either way, it's fun, it's immersive, it results in a beautiful creation at a time of the year where the night sky is so fun to look up and see. Our next resource is the Screen-Free Coding at Home guide for early elementary. This guide is a bundle of all of our magnet kit lessons with all the links in one place, something that many of you have asked for before. We know that many families are focused on minimizing screen time, and so we wanted to ensure that we showcase our lessons and product that don't even require a laptop to show associated videos. You truly just hand them the magnet tiles and their Ozobot, and they're good to go. Because we also know that for young students, drawing color codes with markers is much more challenging than it seems. A lot of you are already familiar with what magnet tiles are, but we have noticed that many folks don't know we have entire lesson series associated with each kit. So if you are someone who is hosting a camp that is tailored to pre-K, kinder, first grade, even second grade students, I highly recommend looking at the magnet kits and using this bundle. They're one of our most popular additions to Evo, and the base kit is $30, and then the add-ons are $10 each. So, the cost is relatively low for what you get out of this product when you use it with students. So each of the lessons in the Screen-Free Coding at Home guide focuses on a different color code skill within the context of an engaging storyline that takes about 20 to 30 minutes to complete. So they really are perfect for those younger students. I personally have a kindergartner, and she loves the magnet tiles. We use them a lot. And we use them both with and without the lessons. Sometimes we go through the lessons and there's a purpose for those. And sometimes she just takes the magnet tiles and she just plays with those and her Evo. This bundle makes it really, really easy to just find those lessons and get started with the magnets. All right, so the final resource that I'm sharing with you today is one that is very near and dear to my heart. And it is one that I will say is certainly applicable to a summer camp session. And it's also incredibly, incredibly useful for those of you who use Ozobots in the elementary setting throughout the school year. So this is our elementary vertical pacing guide. We made this after hearing educators' feedback, asking for a roadmap for all of the lessons that are available in our library. We have organized our pacing guides by individual grade levels, and you will notice that unlike our current pacing guides, which assume that regardless of the age, students are starting coding from the beginning, these offer a way to pace out Ozobot instruction over the course of several years or over the course of several levels. Now, to be very clear, we are not getting rid of our current pacing guides. Those still serve a very strong purpose, and we know that you all love those as well. These serve a different purpose. If you're hosting a camp with students who have varying levels of experience with Ozobot, but they're all in one place, this tool will truly be your new best friend. You can also utilize this pacing guide and view it as somewhat of like a playlist of our very best offerings recommended in a sequenced order. So if you are someone who has visited our library but has been intimidated by the sheer volume of lessons, or if you support teachers who say, oh my gosh, that library, it's fantastic, but there's just so much there, this tool is so powerful for anyone who feels that way. So we have a pacing guide devoted to each grade level, and these are a way to easily find all of the content integration lessons that align to a specific grade. And in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. Each grade begins with a few review lessons to launch instruction where students left off in a previous grade. All of our pacing guides come in both a PDF and a Google Sheets version. When I was in the classroom and worked as a school administrator, all that we ever used was Google Sheets, and so that was very important to me. So that said, I'm going to now show you where you can find those pacing guides and then take a moment to walk through one of them. So this is another new section of our website, ozobot.com/sales/pacing guides. And as you can see, we have them easily organized for every grade level. I'm going to take a look at the PDF version of the third grade pacing guide. And so as I mentioned before, the third grade pacing guide starts with 2 lessons that are really viewed as review. So this is thinking that, students are just remembering what it was that was covered in the kinder first and second grade version. In this case, because it's third grade, they're reviewing color codes in general. And so they're doing that color codes final skills check. After that, students have the chance to apply their previous learning in a new and a little bit more sophisticated age-appropriate context with a few lessons. And then with these pacing guides, third grade is where we introduce Blockly. And so you'll see here that we have all of the introduction to Ozobot Blockly here available for third graders. It's the first half of the Blockly series through the first skills check. The third grade pacing guide ends with one of our favorite lessons, Light Up the Sky with Auroras, where they can apply everything that they've learned in Ozobot Blockly. So each pacing guide is unique to the grade level and the level that they are focusing on. They do all have all of the content integration options that apply specifically to that grade level. So again, if you're someone who uses these throughout the school year, or your intention for this summer is to use Ozobot to really reinforce the content learning that students did all year, this could be a great resource for you to find all of those skills in one place. So now that I've given you a general overlook of what the pacing guides are and how they're organized, I want to take some time to preview some specific lessons that are in the pacing guides. The majority of these lessons that I'm showing you in a moment are ones that our customers have never seen or heard of before because they are fresh out of the EDU team's revision cycle. So the first of those lessons is called Sequencing My Day. It's a color code lesson that lives on the first grade pacing guide. The coding focus of this lesson is on the key concept of sequences. And the instruction is couched within something that students in first grade are very familiar with, the sequence and the order of their day. I really love and appreciate how this lesson takes a practical and everyday application to a cornerstone and crucial coding skill. So students can get a really deep conceptual understanding of what sequencing is all about, and it's made really sticky with this real life application. The next lesson I want to talk to you about, it comes from the second grade pacing guide. It's also color code, and it's called Skater Safety. So in this lesson, students' overall goal is to help Ozobot skateboard safely around a neighborhood, avoiding construction zones and using direction, U-turn, and speed color codes to move continuously without stopping. Not only do students synthesize many of the color code programs they have learned in a really engaging setting, but they're required to think strategically about navigating the track. The lesson asks that students analyze the track before placing any codes by tracing it with their finger. So planning a route in advance is a critical skill in robotics. And it also translates to the social emotional skill of thinking before you act. Puddle jumping with conditionals is a Blockly lesson on the 4th grade pacing guide. Conditionals are important for young coders to understand because they form a really fundamental part of programming logic and decision making. Conditionals allow programs to make decisions based on certain criteria. This helps students learn how to create programs that can respond to different inputs and situations really dynamically, which this lesson does beautifully. Understanding conditionals also enhances problem-solving skills because students really have to break down a really complex problem and question how to puddle jump into really manageable parts and then solve them using logical conditions. Finally, I'm really excited to share not one lesson, but a lesson series that we call the IR Communication Series. It is 3 lessons designed to be taught in sequential order, and they make up the final 3 lessons of the 5th grade pacing guide. The series introduces one of the EDU team's favorite things that our bots can do, and I would argue maybe one of the most underutilized things, which is bot-to-bot communication. This feature is relatively new to our bots, so not a ton of our lessons cover this skill, but I will tell you right now, when kids understand how to use this, an entirely new world of Ozobot opens up to them. As long as they have 2 bots and 2 devices, they can do so many things with the idea that one bot can tell another bot to do something. We are beyond excited to see what students do once they have mastered this skill. So in order to achieve some of the higher levels of coding skills required to effectively utilize infrared communication with Ozobot, a 3-lesson series like the one I just showed you, it really is necessary. Our pacing guides actually include several lesson series that scaffold coding and robotics skills over the course of several lessons. And all of these are relatively new to our lesson library, so I want to be really sure to call them out to you now. The first is called Exploring Functions in Ozobot Blockly. It lives on the 4th grade pacing guide, and it's a 3-part series that guides students through naming and defining functions, using them accurately, and then finally applying them to a game of Snake. Also on the 4th grade pacing guide is another one of our absolute favorites. It's called Robotics Game Design. It's a 4-part series, and it does exactly what the title suggests. Students are applying computational thinking skills such as sequencing, deconstruction, and variables to design various games. It's highly engaging, super fun. I honestly think that an entire week-long camp could be designed around this series alone. The 5th grade pacing guide also includes an amazing series, the 3-part series called Cookie Jar. Students engage in concepts such as data storage, conditional statements, and functions to track and manipulate cookies in a cookie jar. I think you would be so impressed to see the end result of what students can do when they're finished with this series. And as I mentioned, the 5th grade pacing guide ends with that infrared communication series that I just showed you. So I do want to say one final thing regarding our vertical pacing guides. So as I mentioned and keep mentioning, these really are a tool to scope out Ozobot skill building throughout several years or several levels. So this is for you to use if the intention is the long game for you and to develop over a lot of different levels and grades. That said, the pacing guide should not be viewed as a way of preventing students from engaging in one type of coding over another, depending on their age. So, I mentioned before that color code is what we really focus on in kinder, first, and second grade. And then we introduce Blockly in third grade, and students pretty much only use Blockly in fourth and fifth grade. Now, that is not to say, though, that Blockly is not accessible for kinder or first graders, because it absolutely is. There are blocks that are designed for pre-readers. And at the same time, fifth graders, middle schoolers, and high schoolers can engage a lot with color codes. And there are some very sophisticated things that you can do with color coding as well. So please just do not view these as a way of limiting students, but rather pacing them out. So that is all I've got for you today. I am just so grateful for your time and for your interest in hearing what we have created for summer resources. Be on the lookout for that follow-up email. It will contain a lot of links on all of the resources and individual lessons that I referenced in today's session will be there. And also, as soon as you log out of this call, you should receive a survey on your screen. It will take 3 minutes, I promise. It's not a very long survey. And the EDU team will be really looking at those survey results to help inform the creation of future resources for summer school purposes in particular, or summer camp purposes. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to officially end today's session, but if you would like to hang on and share or ask any questions that you have, I'm happy to do so, or you can just start typing questions into the chat. But if you don't have questions, you are free to go. Thank you so much for your time.